Last week, an estimated 1,600 reptiles and amphibians were discovered during a routine inspection at Johannesburg's International Airport. The large shipment of reptiles was smuggled from Madagascar and destined for the exotic pet trade in the United States. Geckos, frogs, chameleons, lizards and toads, many of which are endangered species, were tied up in small muslin bags or crammed into overcrowded plastic tubs for approximately 5 days before they were discovered. Now in studio with us today we have Ainsley Hay, head of the NSPCA's Wildlife Unit, to shed a little bit more light on how big the exotic animal trade industry really is. Good morning.
Morning.
Thanks for joining us. Ainsley, just tell us, let's start with last week's incident. Take us through how the reptiles were discovered and how they were being transported and how bad that situation really was.
Oh, it's absolutely horrific. Luckily, one of our inspectors was doing routine checks at OR Tambo Airport at the cargo section, because we have had animal welfare concerns there in the past, so we do undertake to do routine inspections to make sure all animals are cared for. The inspector actually luckily found the 2 boxes and saw that they were labelled as having live animals in them. When she got closer to the box, she could actually smell a very bad smell, which led her to believe that there were dead animals in this box. So we managed to get the Department of Agriculture, Forestries and Fisheries to intervene so that the 2 boxes could be taken to the Johannesburg Zoo's quarantine station to actually open the boxes and see what's going on. And that's when we opened up the boxes and found the horrific sight of, hundreds of dead animals and other animals in the process of dying, packed very tightly into the crates. Important to note, this was completely legal. They had all the paperwork in place, and this is very, very common. And the only reason we were aware is that there was a delay of a day because the flight to the States was cancelled.
We're seeing some of the horrific pictures of some of the animals that were discovered, but just tell us about the size of this industry, firstly in South Africa, on the continent. I'm sure there's a lot of that as well, and then the wide world.
It's huge, and unfortunately it is growing in popularity. People do forget that exotic animals are actually still wild animals that are being traded. So we have the problem with exotic animals being brought from other countries to our country for the exotic pet trade, and also we have the problem with our indigenous animals being exported to other countries to feed the exotic pet trade elsewhere.
Tell us about why this is so big, and it must be a case of lots of money involved in it.
It is worth an awful lot of money, the trade in wild animals and wild animal parts. Unfortunately, what we find a lot of the time, it's impulse purchases, because owning these sort of animals is a novelty factor. People think they're cool, or it's a topic of conversation, even though these animals suffer greatly being kept in captivity. They haven't been domesticated, and they're not companion animals. They don't gain anything from being kept in a household. So not only is the cruelty involved with the trading of these animals, actually keeping them in households, there's cruelty involved as well.
Who are the people making the money? I'm sure it's not the guys catching the animals. Somewhere along the food chain, somebody must be making the money. Who do we see? Is it the end, the guy who's selling it in his pet shop in the States?
No, for example, in this case, you'd have the main organizer in Madagascar who then pays people. It's generally people from impoverished areas who go out into the wild areas to actually catch these animals. So that trader, the person who sells them in the original country, is making money, and then also the end receiver in whichever country they are going to be sold to the pet trade makes a lot of money, because he purchases them for a certain price and then adds on a markup to the resale.
Tell us about the challenges facing the NSPCA on dealing with this kind of problem. It must be quite difficult to police, I would think.
It is very difficult because it is an extensive trade. Also, we have problems that exotic wild animals are generally not protected by laws in this country. Our nature conservation provincial groups have got laws protecting our indigenous wild animals in this country, but exotic animals, there's generally not laws that protect them. So it's very difficult to control it, and because there's no legislation.
Has Johannesburg become a sort of hub for the export of this kind of animals all around the world?
Definitely, especially our airport. So in South Africa, we have a very big problem of having very porous borders. They're very poorly policed, and laws are very poorly enforced. So international and local animal smugglers or animal traders are using South Africa more and more frequently, because they know that it's a very easy bounce point where they can either bring animals in or send animals out through.
For those people at home who don't know about the legal positions and what goes on. Just clear up for us, what kind of animals are you allowed to keep and which ones are you not allowed to keep?
In terms of the provincial nature conservation laws, you are not allowed to keep any indigenous wild animals as pets generally. However, exotic wild animals you are. But just because it's legal doesn't mean that it's right. There are a lot of things that used to be legal but that we now know better and we don't do. So from an animal welfare side of view, if you want to have a pet, have a dog or a cat that's a companion animal that you love and it loves you back, and you can have a very happy pet ownership with that animal. Don't have an animal that you have to keep in a cage or a tank to be part of your family.
And yeah, in South Africa, has this been something that's also on the increase, or are we not like the Americas of this world where, you know, pets and animals become part of your show, really?
Unfortunately, it's growing all the time, and we're getting all sorts of new rare animals on the market. As soon as there's an interest or a television program on a special rare wild animals, you'll see that the interest increases, and these animals are freely available in the pet trade.
And we now see lots of dead animals and so forth, pet trade and exotic animals, but is there also a medicine type of trade with these kind of animals, and how does that sort of fit in with this?
With different type of animals, there is, in South Africa, we have our local traditional healer medicine use, which is with a lot of our indigenous animals. And then obviously in Asia, there's a lot of use of wild animals and their parts for traditional medicine.
Well, Ainsley, that's where we're going to have to leave it today. Thank you for joining us. It's certainly very worrying, the fact that so many animals are being killed when people are very, very greedy, trying to make money off the back of that. Thank you once again for joining us.